I work at a Target store in Ohio. There are strange rules to follow. The rules were just the beginning. I never thought a retail job could be terrifying. Boring? Sure. Annoying? Absolutely. But terrifying? That was never something I expected when I applied for the night shift at the Target store in my quiet Ohio town. The ad was straightforward. Overnight stock associate needed. $18 per hour. Must follow store protocol. I didn't think much of that last part. Of course, there'd be protocols. Every job had them. I got the job after a 5-minute interview with a manager named Mr. Grayson, a tall, thin man with sharp features and deep-set eyes that never seemed to blink. He handed me a plain folder marked Employee Handbook, Night Shift, and told me to read it before my first shift. I didn't. That was my first mistake. The first shift. I arrived at 10:45 p.m., 15 minutes before my shift officially started. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a few scattered cars. I spotted a couple of employees lingering near the entrance, smoking cigarettes and talking in hushed voices. They stopped the moment they saw me, exchanging uneasy glances. The automatic doors whooshed open, and I stepped inside, greeted by the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. The store was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the daytime rush. I made my way to the break room, where Mr. Grayson and a few other employees were waiting. He handed me a small laminated card with a list of rules printed in bold, black letters. Rules for night shift employees. Rule number 1. Do not answer the phone after midnight, no matter what you hear. Rule number 2. If you see a woman in a red dress browsing the aisles, do not approach her. Ignore her. She will leave. Rule number 3. At exactly 2:13 a.m., take your break in the supply closet. Not the break room. The supply closet. Stay inside for at least 10 minutes. Rule number 4. If you hear your name whispered over the intercom, continue working. Do not respond. Rule number 5. The front doors must remain locked at all times. If someone knocks, do not open them, even if it's a co-worker. I laughed. I thought it was some kind of initiation prank for new hires, but no one else was laughing. This is serious, Mr. Grayson said. Follow the rules, and you'll be fine. Then he clapped his hands together. All right, everyone, let's get to work. Something watches the aisles. Stocking shelves is monotonous work, and for the first couple of hours, nothing unusual happened. I worked alongside a guy named Derek, a short, stocky dude with tired eyes. He'd been at the store for 6 months, and he didn't talk much. At around 12:30 a.m., I heard a faint ringing. The store phone at the customer service desk. I glanced at Derek. Should we answer that? His face turned pale. No, but what if it's important? Trust me, man. Just ignore it. The phone rang again. And again. Each time, it sounded closer, like someone was moving it from station to station. I tried to focus on stocking cans of soup, but my hands felt unsteady. The ringing stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, from somewhere near the clothing section, I heard soft humming. A woman's voice. I turned my head, my breath hitching. There she was. A woman in a red dress, gliding between the clothing racks. Her long black hair covered most of her face, but I could see the curve of her smile. Too wide, too sharp. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Derek, keep stocking, he whispered. Don't look at her. I turned away, heart hammering. My hands fumbled with the soup cans, and I focused on the rhythmic motion of placing them on the shelf. The humming grew closer. The air turned cold. I could feel her standing behind me, watching. Then, just as suddenly, the humming faded. When I finally worked up the nerve to look, she was gone. The supply closet rule. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Derek grabbed my arm and muttered, "Break time." I started toward the break room, but he yanked me back. No, supply closet. Confused, I followed him to a cramped utility closet near the back of the store. The moment we stepped inside, Derek shut the door and locked it. What are we? Chill. We stood in silence. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then outside, footsteps. Heavy, slow footsteps. They didn't sound human. Whatever it was, it dragged its feet across the tiled floor. The sound sent shivers up my spine. Then it stopped, right outside the closet door. The handle rattled. My breath caught in my throat. Derek shook his head slowly, warning me not to make a sound. A low, guttural growl seeped through the crack beneath the door. It was followed by something worse, a scraping noise like fingernails or claws dragging along the metal. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then, the footsteps retreated. Derek waited a full minute before unlocking the door. Never skip the closet break, he muttered. I had no argument. Whispers in the dark. The rest of the night was quiet. Too quiet. At 3:45 a.m., I was restocking cereal when I heard my name. Ethan. I froze. It came from the intercom speakers. The voice was distorted, like a recording being played backward. Ethan. My hands trembled. I looked around. The store was empty. My coworkers were on the other side of the building. Then I remembered. Rule number 4. Do not respond. I swallowed hard and kept working, my entire body tense. The voice continued for 5 long minutes, whispering my name, each time more distorted, more desperate. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. A suffocating silence followed. Then a knock at the front doors. Soft at first, then harder, more urgent. I turned my head slowly. Through the glass, I saw a figure standing in the darkness. It was me, my own reflection, staring back at me. But it wasn't quite right. The eyes were hollow. The smile was too wide. It raised a hand and knocked again. Boom, boom, boom. I backed away, heart racing. Then from behind me, a voice whispering in my ear. You broke the rules. This was just the first night, and I had a feeling things were only going to get worse. The nightmares began. I didn't sleep after that first shift. I barely made it home. I sat in my car in the driveway for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel, my mind replaying everything that had happened. The ringing phone, the woman in the red dress, the thing outside the supply closet, and worst of all, my reflection knocking on the glass. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, maybe even some twisted initiation prank. But deep down, I knew better. This job was a mistake. I should have quit, but I didn't. And that was my second mistake. A warning from Derek. The next night, I arrived at the store at 10:45 p.m. again. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it, the heavy, suffocating atmosphere that made my skin crawl. Derek was waiting for me in the break room. He looked worse than the night before. Deep bags under his eyes, face pale, hands trembling as he clutched a cup of coffee. You're back, he muttered. I shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant. Needed the paycheck. He let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, that's what I thought, too. Before I could ask what he meant, Mr. Grayson walked in. His deep-set, unblinking eyes scanned the room before he handed me a second laminated rules card. Since you're staying, he said, there are a few more things you should know. I glanced down at the new list. Additional night shift rules. Rule number 6. If you see your own reflection moving differently than you, do not acknowledge it. Look away immediately. Rule number 7. If you hear a child laughing in the toy section, leave the area. Do not look for the source. Rule number 8. There is no cleaning crew schedule for the night shift. If you see someone mopping, avoid eye contact and walk away. Rule number 9. Never let the power go out. If the lights flicker, get to the break room immediately. Rule number 10. At 4:44 a.m., do not be near the self-checkout registers. My stomach twisted as I read the list. The words on the page felt heavier now. I didn't laugh this time. I looked up at Mr. Grayson, but he was already gone. The laughing child. The first half of the shift passed without incident. I stuck close to Derek, trying not to let my paranoia get the best of me. The intercom was quiet. The woman in red didn't show up, and the store phone remained silent. Then, around 1:30 a.m., I heard it. Soft, playful, a child's laughter. I was in the home goods section, stacking pillows when the sound echoed from the next aisle over, the toys section. It was faint, but unmistakable. A little giggle, then another. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I gripped the shelf, my fingers digging into the fabric of a throw pillow. Rule number 7. Do not look for the source. I turned back to my cart, pretending I hadn't heard anything. But then, "Excuse me, sir." I stopped cold. The voice was small, innocent, a little boy's voice. My pulse hammered in my ears. Slowly, stiffly, I turned my head just enough to see movement from the corner of my eye. A small figure stood at the end of the aisle, barely 3 feet tall. A boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, in pajamas. His dark hair hung over his eyes, and his tiny hands clutched a stuffed rabbit. He shouldn't be here. But the worst part, he wasn't casting a shadow. He tilted his head. "Mister, can you help me find my mom?" My throat went dry. I opened my mouth, then stopped. A new rule wasn't on the list, but I knew instinctively that it should have been. Do not speak to him. I gripped the cart handle and turned away, forcing myself to keep stalking. The boy giggled again. I felt him move closer. A whisper, right behind me now. "Are you ignoring me?" Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but I didn't move. Then, I felt something cold brush against my arm. I flinched, and the laughing stopped. When I turned back, he was gone, but a small, dirty stuffed rabbit now sat on the shelf beside me. The janitor that doesn't exist. At 3 a.m., Derek and I were restocking frozen foods when I spotted someone near the store's entrance. A janitor, mopping the floor. He wore a faded blue uniform, his head tilted down so I couldn't see his face. I nudged Derek. "Who's that?" Derek turned to look. Then he went rigid. His face drained of color. His hands trembled as he grabbed my wrist. "Back aisle. Now." I hesitated. But now. I didn't argue. We slipped into an empty aisle, out of sight. Derek's breathing was shallow, panicked. "There's no janitor on a night shift," he whispered. A chill ran through me. We stood there, hidden for a long time. The sound of the mop sloshing across the tile filled the silence. Slow, methodical. Then, it stopped. A long pause. And then, wet footsteps, heading toward our aisle. I turned to Derek, expecting him to tell me what to do, but his eyes were shut tight. His hand repressed over his ears. I realized what he was doing. He wasn't acknowledging it. Heart pounding, I mimicked him, squeezing my eyes shut. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Then, right behind us, a low, wheezing voice. "You dropped something." I clenched my teeth, willing myself not to react. For several unbearable seconds, nothing happened. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the presence was gone. Derek exhaled shakily. "You're learning," he muttered. I didn't respond, because on the floor behind us, a mop and bucket sat, water still rippling inside. The flickering lights. At 3:55 a.m., the store lights flickered. I froze. Derek grabbed my wrist. "Break room. Now." We ran. The moment we stepped inside, the entire store went black. For the first time since I started this job, I saw something on Derek's face I hadn't seen before. Fear. He pressed his back against the door, breathing hard. "Whatever you do," he whispered, "don't open this door." Outside, I heard it. the shuffling footsteps, the low, gurgling growls, and then a voice whispering just beyond the door. "Ethan, let me in." I knew that voice. It was mine. Whatever was outside knew my name now, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. The store wants me. I pressed my back against the break room door, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The voice outside, it was mine. "Ethan, let me in." My hands clenched into fists. My body screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Derek stood frozen beside me, his face drained of color. The voice came again, closer now. "Come on, man. It's cold out here." The doorknob rattled. I sucked in a breath, eyes darting toward Derek. He lifted a trembling finger to his lips. "Stay quiet." Something scratched against the door. Long, slow drags of fingernails, or worse. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart hammering. "Don't open it. Don't acknowledge it." A long silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound was soft, almost playful, and then it said something worse. "Ethan, I know you can hear me." My stomach turned. It didn't sound like an imitation anymore. It sounded exactly like me, and it was learning. The power returns, but something is different. We stayed locked in the break room for what felt like hours. In reality, it was only 5 minutes. Then, with a sudden buzz, the power returned. The overhead lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in harsh fluorescent glow. The whispering stopped. The door went silent. Derek let out a shaky breath. "It's gone." I wasn't so sure. Slowly, I reached for the door handle. My palm was slick with sweat. I twisted it gently, just enough to peek outside. The hallway was empty. No sign of me, but something felt off. The air smelled strange, like burnt plastic and copper. The store was too quiet. I stepped out cautiously. Derek followed, his footsteps unnaturally loud against the tile. Everything looked the same, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. And then I noticed it. The store's security monitors, mounted near the ceiling, were glitching. The screens flickered in and out, static rolling across them in distorted waves. One of the screens caught my eye. Aisle 17, the toy section. The camera showed a small child standing perfectly still, facing the shelves. The boy from last night. Only this time, he was grinning, and in his hands, he held a new toy, a stuffed rabbit, the same one I had left on the shelf. I turned to Derek, my throat dry. "You see that?" He nodded, his face grim. "Yeah." Then, in the glitching screen, the boy slowly turned his head toward the camera and waved. The screen cut to black. The wrong reflection. At 4:30 a.m., I went to the men's restroom. I didn't want to be alone, but I couldn't hold it any longer. Derek had stayed near the break room, not wanting to push our luck after the power outage. The restroom was silent when I entered. Too silent. The moment I stepped inside, my stomach twisted. The smell was all wrong, like mildew and something rotting. I told myself to hurry. I went to the sink first, splashing cold water on my face, trying to shake the feeling of unease. And then, I made a mistake. I looked up. In a mirror, my reflection stood perfectly still. My actual body was still moving, lowering my hands, exhaling, but the version of me in the mirror, it didn't move. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Then, slowly, my reflection's mouth twisted into a smile. A too wide smile. Rule number 6. If you see your own reflection moving differently than you, do not acknowledge it. Look away immediately. I tried to turn, to obey the rule, but I couldn't. I was trapped. My reflection lifted its hand, slowly, deliberately, and pressed a finger to its lips. My blood ran cold. Then, without warning, my reflection lunged forward, smashing its hands against the glass. I stumbled back with a strangled yell. The lights flickered. When I looked back, the mirror was normal again. Just my reflection, expressionless. Still, I bolted from the restroom. 4:44 a.m. The self-checkout warning. Derek and I met up near the back of the store. My hands were still shaking. "You okay?" he asked. I shook my head. Then, the overhead intercom crackled to life. "Attention, guests. It is now 4:44 a.m. I stiffened. Derek went rigid beside me. Rule number 10. At 4:44 a.m., do not be near the self-checkout registers. But we were close. Too close. I turned my head slowly. The registers were only a few aisles away, and the store was no longer empty. Figures stood at each register, their backs turned to us. Dozens of them. They weren't employees. They weren't customers. They weren't human. Each figure was tall and stretched unnaturally, their arms too long, fingers twitching against the scanners. Their heads jerked at odd angles, as if their necks were broken. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They just stood there. Derek grabbed my wrist. "We need to go. Now." We moved slowly, backing away from the registers, keeping our eyes down. One step, then another. The intercom crackled again. "Please place your items in the bagging area." One of the figures twitched violently. A deep, guttural clicking sound echoed from its throat. I swallowed hard. Step by step. Unexpected item in the bagging area. Another figure jerked its head toward us. Its face was wrong, smooth, featureless, except for a wide, gaping mouth. Derek grabbed my arm and yanked me behind Niall. We ducked low, not breathing, as the intercom whispered one final message. "Thank you for shopping with us." The lights flickered once, and when they came back, the figures were gone. Something followed me home. At 5 a.m., Mr. Grayson called us to the break room. "Good work tonight," he said, as if nothing had happened. "Same time tomorrow?" I didn't respond. I just grabbed my things and left. By the time I got home, the sun was beginning to rise. The sky was pale gray, the air cold and still. I staggered inside, locking the door behind me. I was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come easy. I collapsed onto my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. And then, somewhere outside, knock, knock, knock. My breath hitched. Slow, deliberate, right at my front door. Then a voice. Soft, familiar. "Ethan, I know you're awake." The rules were supposed to keep me safe, but something followed me home. The rules no longer work. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was soft but deliberate. A slow, rhythmic tapping at my front door. Then my voice. "Ethan, I know you're awake." My blood turned to ice. I sat up in bed, my hands clutching the sheets. The room was still dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, casting long shadows across the floor. I wasn't dreaming. I knew I wasn't dreaming. My throat was dry, my heart pounding. I didn't move. Then, the voice came again. "Come on, man. It's cold out here." The same words from earlier. The same tone. The same perfect imitation of me. Something was standing on my porch, and it wanted me to let it in. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. This wasn't the store. This wasn't part of the rules. The rules didn't apply here. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, checking the time. 5:13 a.m. It wasn't even close to sunrise. Another knock. And then, the doorknob rattled. I nearly dropped my phone. My legs refused to move, my body locked in place. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. A long silence followed. I didn't dare move. Then, from just outside my window, a scraping sound, like fingernails dragging down the glass. I couldn't stay here. I grabbed my car keys, my jacket, and without looking outside, I ran. The drive to nowhere. The air outside was freezing, biting into my skin as I sprinted to my car. The street was empty. No people. No movement. But I could feel something watching me. I jumped into the driver's seat, locking the doors in one motion. My hand was shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. The car started. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to go. I pulled out of the driveway and sped down the road, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The streets were eerily quiet. No other cars. No lights in any of the houses. Like the entire world had gone to sleep or disappeared. I checked the rearview mirror. At first, I saw nothing. Then, a shadow shifted at the far end of the street. A tall figure, standing perfectly still beneath a flickering streetlight. My stomach dropped. It was me, or something that looked like me. It didn't move, didn't react, just watched as I drove away. Derek's warning. I didn't know where to go. For some reason, the only place that felt safe was the store. I pulled into the Target parking lot at 5:45 a.m., the sky still dark. Derek's car was there. I rushed inside, my heart hammering in my chest. The automatic doors slid open, the familiar scent of stale air conditioning washing over me. Derek was in the break room, sipping coffee like he hadn't just escaped a nightmare. He looked up, raising an eyebrow. "You look like hell." I ignored him. Something followed me home. His expression darkened. He set his cup down. I told him everything. The knocking, the voice, the thing in my window. And when I told him about the copy of me standing under the streetlight, his face went pale. "You never should have looked at it," he muttered. I frowned. "What does that mean?" He rubbed his face. "You remember Rule 6? The reflection thing?" I nodded. "That wasn't about mirrors." I felt my stomach drop. Derek sighed. "The store's not normal. We know that. But sometimes, if you stay too long, if you start acknowledging the things here." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The store notices you." A cold dread settled over me. "Are you saying?" Derek nodded. "It's trying to keep you." I felt lightheaded. Derek leaned in. "Did it follow you inside?" I swallowed hard. I don't know. The break room suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Then, overhead, the intercom crackled to life. "Attention, guests. The store is now open." We both froze. The store didn't open until 8 a.m. The clock on the wall read 6:06 a.m. I looked at Derek. His hands were trembling. "That's not supposed to happen." Then, from somewhere deep in the store, we heard footsteps. The store wakes up. Slow, deliberate, coming from the front of the store. Aisle by aisle, getting closer. Derek grabbed my arm. "Break room. Now." We slammed the door shut and locked it. The footsteps stopped right outside. A long silence. Then knocking. Soft, rhythmic. And then, a voice. "Ethan, I know you're in there." My entire body locked up. I didn't need to ask. I knew what was standing outside that door. And then it said something worse. "You can't hide from me forever." The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath came out in a shaky mist. Derek grabbed my wrist, his grip ice cold. "You can't acknowledge it. If you do, you're gone. Just like the others." I felt my stomach drop. Others. His expression turned grim. "Why do you think we go through so many employees?" A chill ran down my spine. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, the knocking stopped. The break room felt normal again. But I knew better. I could feel it. Something had changed. Derek exhaled shakily. "We're running out of time." I turned to him, my hand still shaking. "What do we do?" He hesitated. Then, in a whisper, he said, "We break the rules." The rules were supposed to protect us. But now, they were the reason we were trapped. The store won't let us leave. Derek's words echoed in my head. "We break the rules." I stared at him, my pulse pounding. That's suicide. His face was grim. We don't have a choice. The break room was silent. The air still felt wrong, like something was pressing against reality. Watching. I checked my phone. 6:09 a.m. We still had 2 hours before a shift ended. But I knew, deep down, the store wasn't going to let us leave. Not unless we made it. Aisle 17. The boy returns. Derek pulled out his phone and tapped rapidly. There has to be a pattern, he muttered. A way out. I stared at the door, my stomach twisting. What do you mean? He looked up. Every rule has a reason. Someone figured them out before us. But what if they weren't supposed to? A sinking feeling settled in my gut. Derek exhaled. I think the rules aren't just to protect us. They're to trap us here. A sharp buzz interrupted him. The security monitors flickered. I turned to look. The toy aisle. Aisle 17. The camera feed was glitching, but through the static I saw him. The boy. He stood in the same place as before. But this time, he wasn't alone. A second figure stood next to him. A tall, shadowy shape with arms too long and fingers that twitched. And then, the boy turned to the camera and pointed directly at us. The screen cut to black. The intercom lies. The overhead speakers crackled. Then a voice, Mr. Grayson's voice, but distorted, like a warp tape recording. Ethan, Derek, please report to the front of the store. Derek and I froze. The intercom clicked off. Then, the store lights went out. For a split second, we were plunged into absolute darkness. Then, red emergency lights flickered on. The store had changed. The shelves seemed taller, the aisles longer than before. The air was thick and heavy, like breathing through a wet cloth. Then I noticed something worse. The store wasn't empty anymore. Figures stood in the aisles, not moving, not speaking. Their bodies were wrong, tall, stretched, their heads cocked at unnatural angles. They weren't customers. They weren't employees. They were something else. Derek grabbed my arm. We have to go. Now. The exit disappears. We sprinted toward the front doors. But as we reached the checkout lanes, I felt my stomach drop. The doors, they were gone. The entire glass entrance had been replaced with a solid wall of shelves, stacked high with merchandise. We were trapped. A sharp click behind us. I turned. The self-checkout machines were turning on, one by one. A robotic voice echoed through the speakers. Please scan your items. I swallowed hard. Derek. A figure shifted near the registers. One of the stretched, twitching things. But this one had a face. Mr. Grayson. His eyes were empty sockets, his jaw hanging open at an unnatural angle. Then, in a voice too deep, too layered, he said, "Your shift isn't over yet." And he moved toward us, breaking the rules. Derek grabbed my wrist and yanked me toward the aisles. "Forget the front doors," he shouted. "We need the stockroom." I followed, heart hammering. Behind us, I heard footsteps, not just Grayson's but dozens of them. The things were moving now. The store was waking up. We raced down the aisles, dodging towering shelves, sprinting past displays that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. The signs above the aisles had changed. They weren't labeled with cereal or home goods anymore. They said things like, "Flesh, consume, stay." I felt something graze my shoulder, long fingers cold and dry like old paper. I ducked and kept running. The stockroom was just ahead. Derek slammed into the metal door, shoving it open. We stumbled inside. For a moment, I thought we were safe. Then we saw it. The mirror. A single, full-length mirror, standing in the center of the stockroom. And in its reflection, I saw the store as it was supposed to be. The real world. The one we had left behind. Derek gasped. "That's it. That's our way out." But there was one problem. Standing directly in front of the mirror, blocking our way, was me. My copy. Its face twisted into a grin. "You shouldn't have broken the rules, Ethan," it whispered. And then it lunged. The final choice. It hit me hard, slamming me into the floor. My head cracked against the tile, stars exploding in my vision. I struggled, but it was stronger than me. It pressed its hands around my throat. Derek yelled, but the copy twisted its head unnaturally toward him, grinning wider. Then the mirror shimmered. I saw it. The parking lot. The sun was rising in the reflection. Our way out. But I couldn't reach it. The copy's grip tightened. My lungs screamed for air. My vision darkened. Then Derek did something insane. He grabbed the stuffed rabbit from his pocket, the one from the toy aisle, and threw at the mirror. The mirror shattered. A deafening howl ripped through the stockroom. The copy of me screamed, its grip loosening for just a second. I took my chance. With the last of my strength, I kicked it off me and fell backward into the broken mirror. Escape? I hit the ground hard. But the moment I opened my eyes, I knew I was back. The store was normal again. The shelves, the signs, the lights, all back to how they should be. The front doors were open, and the sun was rising outside. I turned. Derek lay beside me, gasping for breath. We had made it, or so I thought, because as we stumbled out into the parking lot, as the first warm rays of sunlight hit our skin, the intercom crackled, and a voice whispered, "See you at your next shift, Ethan." I turned back. For a split second, I saw it. Aisle 17. The boy, standing there, smiling. And behind him, my copy, still watching, still waiting. The glass doors slid shut, and deep inside the store, something laughed. The end?